Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's start again. Uh, yeah, so introduce yourself. Where are you from and what do you do?
My name is Umeko. I am from a little town in Nova Scotia, Canada. I live in the middle of the woods by the ocean, and I am a mindset and manifestation coach.
Okay, and why did you why did you get into that?
Well, I've kind of manifested all through my life, and for a long time, I was really interested in being a psychologist. But then I ended up kind of veering away from that path um, through several situations that happened in life, and I kind of just let that dream go. And then I recently, in the last couple of years, had coaching kind of emerge into my awareness, and it just really kind of hit a mark for me in the way that coaches get to help people and all that, that kind of stuff. And so I was really drawn to it, and I ended up taking a holistic life coach course, and it was a dual certification. So it was also a mind body practitioner, and then from there, I ended up taking, my Inspired Spirit and Law of Attraction coaching courses, and I also just finished a, emotional processing and nervous system regulation course.
What kind of people you coach?
I currently I am coaching a lot of people who are kind of trying to move forward from traumas that they have, kind of dealt with, but now they're not really sure how to move forward from them. So I'm just helping a lot of, yeah, people who kind of feel stuck, or blocked, or who are struggling to kind of figure out their life path. I help them to find clarity in, yeah, moving forward and what is actually what they actually want and what's the best path for them, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, so what are the biggest mindset shifts that help you transform your life?
Ah, well, gosh, that's a big, rather large topic. Um, Probably, one of the first things to realize is how important your thoughts are. Our thoughts are so powerful, and underneath everything is our thought patterns. Our thoughts affect our emotions, and depending on how we're feeling, our emotions then affect our behavior, and depending on how we behave, we that actually creates our beliefs about ourselves, because when we act a certain way, we view that and we go, "Oh, I just did this, so that means I am," whatever it might be. So, that creates our beliefs. Then our beliefs create our entire perception. So, that is how you view life. So if you trace that all the way back, it all comes back to what it is that we're saying to ourselves. What are our thought patterns? And, you know, realizing that we have these internal habits, that, a lot of the time when people hear the word habit, we think of something that's outside of us. So something that, like I play sports, or I play an instrument, or I paint, or, whatever it might be. But some of the most, ingrained and intense and lifelong habits that we have that people don't even realize are our thought patterns. And, just to hit home how often we think of things over and over again is, as a human, we have anywheres between 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day. And approximately 95% of them are the same thoughts that we had yesterday. And about 80% of them generally are negative. So, every single time that you, let's say you just binge watched a whole series on Netflix, or you ate a whole bag of chips, or, you drank too much, or whatever it might be, maybe you made a mistake and you embarrassed yourself. When we do these things, we generally say the exact same thing to ourselves afterwards. However, whatever that, you know, a lot of the times we say really negative things to ourselves, calling ourselves really unpleasant names. So becoming aware of what that dialogue is when we do these things, that's the first thing that you kind of have to pay attention to. And then from there, you know, the brain is really amazing because it's what they call plastic, meaning that it can change shape. So when we realize that we have these negative patterns of thought, which generally come from childhood, we can then start to choose new patterns of thought. So, you know, if we, as children, we generally have our belief system put in place by age 7, which is rather inconvenient because as children, we don't have a logical brain, we have an emotional brain. So that means that we take everything personally. We don't have that, ability to kind of empathize. That's, kids can be pretty ruthless because they're not born with that. And so we can take a situation that's completely innocent and end up creating really awful negative belief systems off of it. Like, for example, let's say that you're 5 years old, your mom's working shift work, so she's been gone all day, and you are, you're at home, you're excited to see her, you drew her a pretty picture, and she's about to arrive home. So you're so excited, you run up to the door, pause there for a moment. So looking at mom, let's say she's a nurse, so she just worked a super long, rough day, right? And she loves you very much, but wants nothing more than to come inside, take her shoes off, go for a shower, and go to bed. So yeah, unpause from you. So you're excited. She comes in, she gives you a hug. You give her your picture. She says, like, "Oh, that's nice, honey, but mom's gonna go have a shower and then she's, just gonna go off and spend some time on her own and go to sleep." And so she gently dismisses you. Now, from this completely innocent situation, we could end up creating beliefs like, oh, mom doesn't actually want to spend time with me. I'm not worthy of mom's time. Or maybe mom doesn't actually love me. In from this very innocent situation, we can end up creating thoughts like that and belief patterns like that we end up repeating to ourselves throughout the rest of our lives. And even if there are like 1,000 other situations that disprove that belief, but there's one that does prove it, we will hold on to that and we go, aha, I knew it. I knew that I was right. And we just completely overlook all the things that, counteract that actual belief. So once we realize that we have these patterns, we get that awareness of these negative belief patterns that we say to ourselves, then we can start to work with our brain's ability to, be plastic and to shift and mold. So you can kind of think of, I guess the best way to put it would be our brains are made out of, millions of neurons, and between these neurons are neural networks or neural connections and neural pathways, rather. And when we repeat these things over and over again, we strengthen those pathways. So you can kind of think of these pathways like roads. And when we repeat something over and over, you're kind of building that road, you're constructing it and making it stronger. So when we have these thought patterns that we've thought since we were, you know, 5 years old or whatever it might be, they're going to be your super highway. They're going to be so strong and, so, yeah, kind of grounded in there that there are automatic. Like we don't even have to think about it. It just, that's where our brain goes when whatever, situation happens to trigger it. And so when we start realizing that, we are these roads that we have paved for ourselves are taking us to, like self-sabotage and procrastination and limitation and all this kind of stuff, we can start going, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. And I would rather, I want to go to this place of self-love or, self-acceptance or, that kind of a thing. And so when we first start trying to shift our focus from that super highway of ours you can kind of think of it like you're starting to tread like a new footpath to this new destination that you want to go to. And when we start doing this, you're going to feel so much resistance. Your brain is going to be like, what the heck, dude? Like, why are we doing this? You have to consciously think about this. Because here's the thing is that our mind or our brain only has so much conscious energy to be able to use within each day. And so our brains love to automate things because then you don't have to think about it. You just automatically do it. You don't have to use any brain power. So, those super highways, those are your automations. Those are the things you don't even have to think about. So when you decide you're going to take this new little footpath, your brain's like, "Oh my god, stop. Why are we doing this?" And you're going to feel that resistance. But if you keep choosing that new path and you consistently take that new path, you catch yourself when you're, about to have that negative self-talk about whatever it might be that you're having trouble with, and you go, "No, I'm going to choose this new positive path." Each time you do that, you are strengthening that road. And, it might start off as a footpath and then it's going to grow into, a single lane dirt road and then a gravel road and a paved road and so on. But here's the extra beautiful thing about it is that when we are constructing that road, at the same time, we're actually deconstructing that super highway that we've created because on each neuron, there is only so much glue around the outside of it. It's called neural growth factor, but you can definitely think of it kind of like a glue. And there's only so much on each one. And so as we are focusing and choosing this new path and building it up, you're actually taking glue away from that original super highway that you had. So it's deconstructing as you construct the new path. So I guess those are kind of the key elements of what I would say are like the top um, those are the concepts that have helped my clients kind of move forward the best is, yeah, understanding the power of your thoughts, realizing what internal habits you have, recognizing, your negative belief systems that you've brought forward, and then also realizing that you can choose what belief systems you want and you can actually change them, that your mind is plastic and will shift. Those are, that was a bit of a long-winded way to say all of that, but that's that's the gist of it.
Why do you think like so many people struggle to kind of break out of those patterns?
Oh gosh. Definitely number one is just simply not being aware of what those patterns are in their minds. Through coaching, it's such a powerful experience to get to be a part of people's transformations because, it's through the questions that I end up asking people that they uncover these realizations that they didn't even realize that they were thinking these things or keeping themselves stuck. And it's all very much kind of a mind game, I guess you could say. And yeah, I would say definitely just not really being aware that they're keeping themselves in those boxes that they've created.
Okay, and you said something about like age 7, depending on age. Do we grow out of once we grow up, right? Is there something happens inside of it?
Yeah, so I think I know what you're trying to ask. So between ages 2 to 7 is generally when we create most of our belief systems, and I don't know the scientific side of this or anything like that, but what I do know is that when we're children, when we're that young, our brains are actually functioning in a different state than what we do as adults. As in, normally, we function on a regular day to day basis in what they call beta. So, beta is our normal waking life time that we're, doing what we're doing right now or, anything like that. And when we go into a meditative state, the next one down, like our next stage down, is called alpha. And so that is actually where most children are operating from. So it's kind of like when we go into a deeper meditative state, we are much more impressionable. And yeah, we are able to kind of take things in differently, which is part of, when people are trying to create real change in their life, that doing like meditations and that kind of stuff can be so, so impactful because you are in a much more um, in a state that allows you to be able to kind of shift your mind more easily and change those belief systems and stuff and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's why as children where we end up creating all of those belief systems. I'm not sure what it is that happens after that age. I don't know if that just so happens to be the age that we kind of shift into the more conscious way of being and we start kind of developing that more like empathetic and more, I don't know, just the regular adult brain sort of stuff.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if someone, for example, right, if you were if you were starting a business, like you gotta you or whether whatever it is, whether you wanna like get into some sports, right? You gotta have that work ethic. You gotta build. Now, if I am someone who doesn't have, like, I'm at zero right now. So if I were to go from that zero, what would be the process in terms of like from that zero to achieve whatever? I mean, if we have the answer for it.
Yeah, so I think that kind of that would be sort of in line with kind of more like manifestation processes. So, trying to first of all, shifting the mindset, so becoming aware of where it is that you're holding yourself back and going through all of that uncovering where it is that you're limiting yourself. And then from there, you'd move forward in, creating what it is that you actually want to be thinking. So, if you are struggling to, you are, lacking motivation or let's use that as an example, then most likely your inner dialogue is saying something along the line. You're probably telling yourself that, right? You're like, "Oh, I'm just lazy. I don't have any motivation. I feel tired all the time. I don't really feel like doing that. Ugh, this is hard. That's too much work." And that is most likely what your inner dialogue is actually telling you. So that's where you got to come in and go, okay, you know what? I need to change that because when you change your thoughts, it affects your emotions, which affects your behavior, which affects your beliefs, which affects your perception. And you can literally shift your entire life from changing your thoughts. So when you realize that you're having that struggle, it's just becoming aware of what is that internal dialogue that you're telling yourself. And then from there, you choose what you actually want to be thinking. Look at the people that you're inspired by and think about what is it that they probably tell themselves every day, right? Like they're probably getting up in the morning and saying, today's going to be an awesome day. I'm going to be super productive. These are all the things I'm going to get done, and they create sort of like a series of affirmations. And, affirmations are such a great way to kind of shift your mindset and your energy. Um, and yeah, that's kind of the underlying of what I think you're asking there.
Gotcha. And like manifestation, how do you manifest? What's your way?
Oh gosh, there's a ton of ways, and manifestation's super fun because there is so many different kinds of processes that you can use. And one thing doesn't necessarily work for another person. But for me personally, I am very much a visual person. I'm an artist, so I love, creating vision boards for myself. Even if you're not doing like a physical one, creating like a Pinterest board, using like my background on my computer and my phone to have those images of things that inspire me. I use affirmations a lot. So every time that I'm driving in the car, I'm usually just saying affirmations to myself, if not out loud, then in my head. And it's really another really powerful thing that I like to do is to I have like my goals for, the month and the week or the year all written out. And I like posting them in places that I don't necessarily read them all the time, but they're within my visual, kind of space that I see frequently because your mind is constantly assessing what's going on around you, but it kind of, in our conscious mind, we're only processing so much because we'd just be overstimulated, super overstimulated, if we actually had to pay attention to every single little detail. So our brain does this little bit of filtering, but everything around you is being processed at all times. So when I have those, those papers written that I don't necessarily read them, like I do like to glance at them, a couple times a week maybe. But other than that, I just have them there within my visual field when I'm sitting at my laptop, and I have them posted on my wall. So that's a really powerful thing that you can do that, requires kind of minimal to no effort, which is nice. But meditation is absolutely, if you are really trying to make a shift in your life, I can't stress enough how impactful meditation can be. That is like a number one, absolutely, and tuning into that, you know, uh, getting clear on what it is that you want, and you know, uh, tuning into the feeling of already having it. And this is really, really important when it comes to manifesting, is making sure that your energy is tuned into the right frequency, because so often the mistake that people make is that when they're trying to manifest something, they think of what they want, but inside they feel crappy about it because they're like, I don't have it yet, it's not mine, like I just want it so bad. But it's right, so they kind of, what the frequency is that they're giving off is actually the lack of it. So that's what they continue to draw, is this lack of whatever it is that they're asking for. So tuning in and making sure you actually are feeling as if you already have it, and kind of get it to the point where like it just settles in your bones, like you just know that it's coming to you. And it's not always the easiest, and especially at first it can be a bit challenging to keep yourself there. But again, with the meditation, if you can tap into that feeling just while you're meditating, at least it can drastically change your life and shift a lot of things. So those are just a few ways that I like to manifest. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Even with myself, I mean, I don't necessarily meditate, but even with myself, right? I would literally, I recently, it's been months. I bought a bike, new bike, right? So yeah, so I had this bike, I've been trying to get. So what I did, I Photoshop myself with that, instead of just yeah. So and that really worked. I mean, even when I moved to my first apartment, I did the same thing. I already not necessarily. I kind of had like a mood board of what I want, and then I would see myself what I'm working. I would see myself in feel like I'm on that apartment. So yeah, that's actually great. So yeah, but I am I missing out by not meditating?
Different things work for different people, and but like honestly, yeah, meditation is really, really powerful because, kind of like I was mentioning with the kids being in a different state of mind, when we meditate, we shift our consciousness into that more malleable, more, able to take in different thoughts and ideas more easily, because when we're
What do you mean by malleable?
malleable, oh, just like it, yeah, we're just able to more easily kind of program different ideas and concepts into our mind in a different way. So, when we're functioning on our day-to-day life, our conscious mind is, it's quite critical. And it's very set in its ways generally. And we really have to work to try to shift it, especially when the subconscious mind, has specific beliefs. And if we just consciously think, if we have that belief in our subconscious that, like, oh, we're never going to have enough money, or we're never going to, be successful, we have to reprogram that thought in our subconscious. And when we meditate, we move from just that, regular beta functioning state, and we shift down into, alpha and then theta. And that's really where you can create shifts more quickly when you are in those kinds of states because it's just easier to kind of shift your mindset in those ways instead of just being at our regular conscious kind of regular day-to-day life energy.
Gotcha. Can you explain for someone who is like a third grader what is unconscious and then conscious and what do you mean by alpha and theta?
So we have our conscious mind, which is our basically the newest part of our brain. So as we've developed as humans, we have, the our original brain is what most people would call like your reptilian brain. So it is all just kind of all about survival, and it's very, very, you know, sort of basic, I guess you could say, in just kind of living, breathing, existing, that kind of thing. Then on top of that, the next part of our brain that developed was what you would call the limbic brain or the emotional brain. And so this is where all of our emotions and all that kind of stuff kick in. So those two pieces are what we would call our subconscious mind. Those are kind of all the things that just happen automatically. And they're just, yeah, really primed on our survival. And then our conscious brain is that newer part. So, like, whenever you see pictures of brains and there's like the pink squiggly part that's on top, that's basically the newer part of the brain in the front. And so, a lot of our belief systems, all of our belief systems are kind of stored in that subconscious mind. And our conscious mind is, logical, it's rational. You think through things, whereas your subconscious is, a bit irrational. And, it's like our supercomputer that remembers everything, but it's not always correct. And a lot of the times, these beliefs that we end up holding in here are actually just based off of fears and not facts. So those are kind of the two separate areas in the brain. And then for what I was talking about with the alpha and so we have there's a there's a few other ones, but there's four main states that our brains kind of operate in. So if you were hooked up to like a machine that read your energy that was coming off of your body, your vibration, when we are active in our day-to-day life, that energy is, or that frequency, whatever you wanna call it, that is beta. And then from there, if we go into a little bit of a meditative state, when you go into, like, relax mode, when you're kinda just checking out, that's when you go into alpha. So that's our next, kind of relaxed state. Then we go into theta, which is when we go into a meditative state. So when you feel that really nice, calming, soothing, your mind is quiet, all of that kind of stuff. That's when we're hitting theta. And then we have delta. And that's when you're basically sleeping. It's extreme relaxation. And when you're sleeping, you kind of hit that kind of range of frequency.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So like which one is we want in order to like tune into.
For like reprogramming our brains, you mean?
Yeah, just to like get the most out of it.
Yeah, definitely theta. So that's the third stage. That's when you're in that really nice, deep, quiet, relaxed state. That's ideally where you want to hit. But there's also the option of, you can get like audios that you can listen to while you're sleeping, which is like, like great because then you don't even have to, you don't really have to do a whole lot. And you can get these audio recordings to be able to help you reprogram your mind. And I'm actually working on a series right now that's going to be touching on all sorts of different things like, healing our inner child and trying to attract more abundance and success and, yeah, letting go of limiting beliefs, all that kind of stuff. I'm currently working on a series that I'm intending on creating into a very, probably a few hours is something that you could put on while you're going to sleep. And then, yeah, you have to do minimal work.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I mean, like you would have some speeches there.
Yeah, so those are gonna be like guided meditations basically. So it would just be something that you could I'm gonna create a couple different versions of them. So some longer ones that you could listen to, you could put it on your audio for while we're going to sleep, or you could consciously, sit and then actually do the meditation kind of thing. So yeah, it's just a guided meditation.
Okay, and then do you also focus on breath work?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Breath work is a really great way to be able to shift the consciousness. So our the breath is such a powerful tool because the breath generally is part of our autonomic nervous system, meaning like it just happens automatically. We don't have to or um sorry, that's opposite of that. Our somatic system is so that is stuff that just it happens and we don't even have to think about it. Or did I say that right? Oh, now I'm confusing myself. Anyways, our breath is part of our system that just happens naturally, and we don't even have to think about it. But we also have the ability to be able to control it. And so when we actually dial it in, we can really kind of take our meditative state to that really nice deep level and to shift our consciousness in different ways just with the breath alone.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so do you can you share like a real life example of manifestation that worked? Mm, I mean, before you share that, right? Can you like what's the biggest misconception people have about manifestation?
It was misconception. Um,
I mean, you probably hear a lot like when you like probably your family, someone probably say, "Hey, what do you do here? Oh, you were a manifestation coach? Yeah, got it off."
right. I would say probably the biggest misconception is that it doesn't work. Um, and it absolutely it's so powerful. And I think that um the thing is that people don't realize that they are constantly manifesting everything that's happening in their lives. So, when they have all these terrible things happening to themselves and you know, they really don't like to hear that it's actually them who have drawn it to themselves. That really bothers them. So, and yeah, that can be a bit of a tender spot. That's yeah, probably one of the things that people maybe don't like to hear so much about manifestation.
Like, yeah, and then you share like a real life example of someone that have a massive like shift through manifestation. I mean, someone you have coached.
Wow. Hmm. Well, I have, let me think. For me personally, I can't think of anybody else off of the top of my head, but for me personally, I have been super blessed in that I have manifested the life that I live right now. Like I'm living in the middle of the woods with pretty much no bills. My partner and I, he built his house, and when we got together, we ended up building this studio together. He's the brains behind it. I can take no credit for that, but I assist. And, you know, we have this I have this beautiful life that is, in this day and age is very, I guess you could say, sought after in a sense. We have chickens, we live in the woods, I live by the beach, it's pretty close. We have almost no bills, and, I get to do what I love, and I am really blessed. When I had graduated from high school, I had actually moved out to the other side of the country, and I had started pursuing a career that I ended up not, connecting with and not liking the way that I thought I would. And I kind of had this huge shift that while I was out there, when I moved back here, which is where I grew up, to Nova Scotia, I had made this decision that I was done doing anything I didn't want to do. I was over doing crappy jobs that I didn't like and that I was broke and I had all this debt and I was done with all of that. And, ever since then, been incredibly blessed that I haven't had to do any jobs that I don't wanna do. I get to enjoy everything that I do. I get to especially now, that manifestation that I created really kind of snowballed into this beautiful situation that I have now. The studio that I have is literally right on our property, like, I don't even have to leave my property to go to work. It's great, and, yeah, I'm incredibly blessed.
Yeah. Now this is a great question. You say you live in the woods, right? So how how does spending time in nature impact your mindset and emotions? I mean, how the it's stupid to ask. Is Yeah, it definitely does for everyone, but
Yeah, absolutely. Being out in nature is majorly impactful, and spending time with animals and, doing anything that can connect you back to, kind of, we're all a part of this earth, and, there's so many people who end up so disconnected from it because they live in, cities and that kind of stuff, and it's a lot harder to connect in those sort of situations. And yeah, I feel very blessed, and I think I'd go a little loopy if I didn't live in the woods somewhere. It's been a huge part of my, all throughout my life. Growing up, I grew up in a community of 200 people in the middle of nowhere. The closest town was like a 30-minute drive, and the closest city is about an hour. Uh,
yeah. So would you mind sharing about your coaching a bit?
Yeah, so I have a 12-week program that I kind of use, or it's more of like a guideline. And it's really to help people who are feeling stuck or stagnant in their life to move forward. And, especially when we have, traumas and that kind of stuff in our life that we have dealt with, but now we sort of need to figure out how to move forward from them. I find that most of my clients who come to me kind of have that same sort of, categorization, I guess you could say. And, yeah, it's super, the strategy that I love to use with people is that at the beginning, we kind of go through this time frame where I love to share knowledge about, the mind and body and, the biological side of what's happening in our brains, in our minds, and in our bodies. And, learning about emotional processing, nervous system regulation, learning about, what's happening in our brains. And then I love to, once we have that understanding, then moving them forward into, kind of realizing how impactful doing things like affirmations and that kind of stuff is, and meditating and all of those sorts of practices. I find when, you have that factual, logical side understood, that it just really hits home in a different way. When people start to move into doing these more metaphysical, quote unquote, metaphysical practices, and what exactly is happening in their mind and body when they're doing that. It just makes so much more sense, especially for people who don't know anything about that kind of stuff. It kind of creates that bridge between the scientific and the metaphysical.
Okay, and how many clients you have at the moment?
Right now, I have 3 clients who are active with me, but I've had probably 15 or so in the last little while.
Yeah. Okay. And can you like um tell us more about your clients? Like it's like who are they in terms of not generally, but like the clients you have, like how you were helping them with
Yeah, so most of the clients that I have, I can't say a whole lot of specifics because there is the confidentiality between client and coach. But a lot of them are the couple that I have right now, they're kind of dealing with a lot of anger from their past, and, you know, moving forward from the traumas that they've had and learning to, kind of move themselves forward and releasing that anger and, you know, kind of learning the strategies to be able to forgive and actually feel good about where they're going, and breaking themselves out of the cycle of, kind of this. They've got themselves in a bit of a hard spot mentally. Um, and yeah, that's kind of the general what I'm working with right now. But I've had a range of clients. Some of them are, not spiritual at all and very, very in like the factual and just looking for those strategies to move them forward from, I've had people who have struggled with, they just went through a divorce, or I've had people with seasonal affective disorder, and, people who have spiritual understandings but are, having their own blocks that they, just need that help kind of getting over the hump of figuring out what it is that's blocking them and where they're holding themselves back.
Okay. And yeah, so all right. One last question and I'll probably end this. Yeah, so what would you say for someone if in terms of like how manifestation can what manifestation can do?
I mean, manifestation can do, gosh, it can do anything for you, really. If as long as you believe that it's possible for you, it's just, shifting that mindset of limitation and where you're holding yourself back and allowing yourself to manifest those things that you actually want, to allow yourself to open up to the possibility, that, we are connected, we are a part of this, what has created everything that you're seeing and experiencing. And when you tap into that energy, you can bring anything you want to you, and it just takes that correct mindset and the right strategies, tapping into that right energy, and you can completely create your dream life. You have the ability to manifest anything you want in your life. We're all incredibly powerful beings. We just limit ourselves by these beliefs that we've, chosen as our truths when they aren't actually. We've never questioned them, so we just think that those are our reality. But you can shift anything in your life. You are the creator of your life 100%.